So yeah, you can start whenever works for you.
Perfect. So I'm going to start, give a little bit of pause, and then start from there.
Perfect.
Hi, everyone. Great to talk to you today about mastering alert triage. And one of the things that I've seen in several companies is many times, if it's a smaller company, is generating thousands of alerts a month to tens, and sometimes at very large enterprises or MSSPs, even hundreds of thousands of alerts a month. And one thing that I've seen in last 4, 5, 6 years is that 80 to 90%, and sometimes even 95% or more of the work can be reduced by applying automation. So I'm going to talk about that in a little bit of depth today. And this is one of the very common problems across the industry. And few observations that I've seen is for smaller companies, it's unfortunate, but many times there are not enough people to look at the alerts that get generated. Many people don't even measure what's their mean time to respond is. And when they do for the first time, they're surprised that it's in hours and days and not in minutes. And many of the folks that do not use a full-blown case management system, they're simply getting overwhelmed with alerts. And the process is fairly ad hoc, right? And if you ask someone why an alert that fired 5 days ago was closed, there isn't a good audit trail. And these are all the challenges that I've seen, security teams, small and large, face. And one of the questions that we're going to explore in this is how can SOAR help with these challenges, help security teams deal with these challenges? And what I have found is that there is really a step-by-step process that you can apply and get results very quickly. I would say in as much as 30 days. And it really starts with defining success criteria, figuring out the noisy alerts, and actually figuring out what is the playbook, what are the analysts supposed to do in response to the alert, building in metrics collection reporting so that you can see how you're making the progress, and then getting to the fun part of it is actually automating the triage investigation response to eliminate noise and to improve MTTR. So these are the things that I'm going to dig a little bit deeper and walk you through in detail with a few slides and actually give you a demo of the product. And the good part of it is a couple of months ago, Devo acquired Logic Hub, and these are the SOAR platform and the capabilities are available today. With that, let's dive into a little bit of a deeper dive into how we accomplish the key goals that we set in a step-by-step fashion. So this is a segue, and we can probably cut out like maybe 30 seconds, and I'm gonna dive into this part of the presentation.
Sounds great.
Great. Awesome. So now let's look at one of the first goals is, right, almost every security team gets too many alerts that they have time to look at. So one very effective method is to actually build automation as the first layer of defense, right? Even before it gets to any analyst, we want to make sure that we have playbooks in place that are doing an initial review of every single alert that's coming in, right? And as you see newer alerts, they will move on to, they will get escalated to a team of human analysts, but our goal always would be to building the playbooks that can triage those alerts, at least do the first pass automatically. And in the first pass, we can do things like, we can look at a ton of alerts that are all related to the same entity, an IP address or a username, and we can bundle them together into a single case so that analysts are not having to go through one at a time. And furthermore, right, based on all the context that we can gather around the alert itself, we can assign it a priority. We know some of the alerts are going to be super noisy, and most of the time they're not actually actionable, right? And so we can customize and give them a score that is much, much lower. and the analyst can look at much higher priority things first before they look at much lower priority. So you get a much better SLA for higher priority ticket items, and there might be very, very low priority items that becomes a best effort. That's a strategy that I've seen many security teams apply to make the best use of analyst time. And whenever we look at an alert and say, hey, it's a false positive, and a human analyst doesn't need to look at it, we can actually create an audit trail, and you can add that audit trail back to your SIM, and we'll talk through some of these in even more detail. Here is one. So we took this idea and we applied in our own SOC, and to our delightful surprise, what we found is that you can actually take about 2,000 alerts and turn them into 66 cases. And this is basically by doing two things. One is correlating all different alerts that might be coming from the same IP address or the same user. User might be involved in those, and we pull those together. That gives you one reduction. And the second one is basically filtering some of the alerts we know are noisy and less actionable. And that's where you see there is a big drop between about 2,000 alerts to 700 alerts that made into the cases. The other 1,300 never contributed to case. And then you can look at the 700 alerts that made into cases, and you can group many of them together. And once you start doing that, you'll notice that you get another 10x reduction. So you go from like 700 alerts to 66 cases. Far fewer things for an analyst to look at. So let's look at the second problem. So now that you have much fewer cases, right? Even that could take 20, 30 minutes, sometimes an hour. And when you look at this, many times what people are doing, finding related alerts, related cases, finding all the context, additional information, who does this IP address belong to? Is this user a high value target user? And those are the things, many enterprises have that information in different systems. And they, rather than relying on an analyst to switch between 3-4 different systems, copy paste user IDs from one system to another system, copy paste back the data, it's just mundane work. And we are just wasting time. This is all the work that can be automatically done with a playbook. And I'll show you an example where, we create a rich case. This is a case that we created that came from an alert. And typically when we look at the alert, it has very, very minimal part of information. And what we figured out, okay, where is this happening? What is the user analyst involved in this process, right? What was the big alert that was triggering it? Why? And because we got that alert, we triggered it. But then we go ahead and try to find other reasons to either validate and say, yes, this alert is an incident, or more often than not, we come up with the reasons why it is safe to ignore and close this particular ticket. And then you also see a lot of negative reasons. There are reasons that can bump up the priority, and there will be reasons that will lower the risk and lower the priority of those. And so one of the things at the very bottom that we see is that this is a very, very well known as a noisy alert. And that is something that we can factor in. And what you're seeing on the right-hand side at the bottom is you can look at all of these factors and come up with a score. And based on the score, you can set a priority. So if you look at the very top, you have the status, and the priority is actually deemed as very, very low. Given all the context that we looked at, we can automatically make the decision that this is not a high priority, this is not a critical priority, this is a low priority. And so when we are working with the cases, we can go after that in a priority order. And that way, we are not spending a lot of time on low priority. Instead, we're focusing on things that are critical. And this prioritization is highly customizable. And every security team will have a slightly different variant of how they like to prioritize. And no matter what their logic is, and that's one of the strong suites of the Logic Hub platform, of the Devo SOAR platform, that we can take any custom logic that you might want to implement to calculate priority, you can add that to a playbook. And not only you can do the enrichment, which is bringing all the context together, not only can you do the decision automation, is it a false positive, is it a low priority, is it a critical? That's a decision we are making. And typically, without automation, someone has to spend 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes on every single case to make that decision. And the decisions can get inconsistent depending on who is there. They're applying a different strategy. And so you get a lot of inconsistency, and it might not be fully documented. One of the advantages of doing it with the playbook is it's all documented, it's very consistent, and you can have an audit trail, just like we have in this ticket, is what are all the reasons why we didn't think it is a critical incident. And then once you have created the case, now the time comes for response. And this is one of the key capabilities, and I'll show you a demo of this in the product, is that you can add these tasks. And typically when people think of tasks, these are manual tasks. But what is really good about the SOAR platform here is that almost every task here is what we call a command, which basically means in one click, you click that button called run next to the next graph and alerts timeline. And the rest of the process is already automated. So it's human in a loop automation. If you're blocking IP addresses on the firewall, right, you want someone, if you're not very confident about the automation quite yet, you might want an analyst in the loop to review all the evidence. Yes, this is a really critical event, and yes, we want to go block this IP address on the firewall. But then once you have made the decision, all you have to click is one button, the run button, and then adding that particular IP address to the firewall, or taking a hash and adding it to a blacklist, for example, on an EDR solution, can be done fully automatically. And what that does, it just reduces the time it takes to respond. Because what you have done is you have done the enrichment process, the decision-making process automatically, and even you have taken what could take minutes, and if you have to take 5 or 6 action items, it could be 10 minutes before you know it. It can all be, with the help of automated actions, it can all be turned into like 10 seconds instead of 10 minutes. So I talked about, as we are doing these things, one of the big benefit is, we are producing consistent, predictable results. And because the SOAR platform comes with a very powerful case management system, you can configure fields, workflows, and whatnot. You can actually use the case management system as a repository of the audit trail for what the analyst is doing with an alert or a case, and what the automation is doing with the alert and a case as well, right? So everything is very well documented, and you don't have to rely on people to create those documentation. And I see this again and again, that relying on people to document it like 30 times a day, it just doesn't yield really good results. And it's quite honestly, it's very mundane, repetitive work, and analysts don't enjoy documentation. And it's just a waste of time. If you could create the audit trail, if you could create the documentation with automation, why not? So all of that magic, and I'll give you a live demo of this, there is a playbook behind it, right? That looks at all the alerts that come in. It aggregates it and builds the context around it. It extracts interesting features about the case, interesting factors, interesting reasons why someone's priority should be higher, some priority should be lower. It takes those features and then scores the case based on that. You can use a whitelist, for example, or a blacklist, right? So that's also one type of, additional context information. Is this user already on the blacklist, or is this user on a whitelist? There might be an administrator that's doing an action that would normally considered suspicious. And if you can do that correlation, then you can avoid generating a lot of false positives. And at the end of the day, you create a prioritized case, and the case creation is done by the playbook, because the entire case management system has very rich APIs, and anything that a user can manually do in that case management system can be fully automated inside a playbook. And typically what we have seen is having a playbook like this will eliminate 90 to 95% of the work that an analyst would have to otherwise do. So if they had to spend like 30 minutes or 20 minutes going through this exercise, after you have built one of these playbooks, one, 80 to 90% of the alerts are simply eliminated. And two, even for the 10% that actually gets created, instead of having to spend 20 minutes on it, analysts have to spend 1 or 2 minutes on it. So it results in a massive, massive amount of productivity gains. And it's not hyperbole. I've seen MTTRs go down by 10x, 20x, sometimes even 50x. It goes down from 6 hours down to less than 10 minutes. And one question that many people wonder, right, is how much investment do I have to make in a SOAR platform? And what my experience has been working with a lot of security teams is that if you simply did a very simple exercise that takes less than half an hour to do, is you look at last 30 days or last 90 days, and you simply run a simple query to say, give me all the alerts and count all the alerts and by type. And here is a simple, it's actually a very realistic data coming from our internal SOC. And what we realized is that if we only automated 10 playbooks, 10 different types of alerts, if we figured out, okay, what is the playbook for that, and we automated that, it will result in 98% reduction in the number of alerts. So we go from something like 2,000 alerts in 30 days down to 40 cases. That's a massive, that's like a 50x reduction in the amount of work that an analyst has to do. And naturally, because this is so noisy, analysts simply don't have time to go through every single one of those 2,000 alerts that fire. So in a nutshell, I think very, very quickly, analysts, security engineering teams, SOC teams can automate 5, 10 playbooks and reap 10, 20x improvements in MTTR, mean time to respond. So it makes the security much more efficient, much more responsive. But at the same time, perhaps an even bigger advantage is it eliminates a lot of noisy workload for the analysts. I hope you give it a try because this capability is available today. Thank you. That's it.
Great job. That was great.
One of the things that I did forget, and I have not done this, and so because I put that pause in there, right? And so I might actually go record another few minutes because I kept saying I'll give you a demo, but I haven't given a demo, right? So bear with me.
Okay,
bear
sure,
with
yeah.
me for 5 minutes, and it will be very short. The demo is not very long, so I'm gonna switch gears and then. So let me actually start switching, sharing this, and I will. Give me, okay, I'm gonna share this. Can you see the window right now?
Yeah.
The dashboard? Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply pretend that I did the flip and I started talking through it.
Okay, great.
So now let's dig into the product, log into the product, and this is our SOAR platform, right? And one of the things, what I've seen is a really good practice is that the security teams will have really good metrics around what they're measuring, right? And one of the things we talked about, the reduction in number of cases, and it's a live dashboard. So while on the screenshot we saw 66 cases, here we see about 68 cases being created in the last 7 days, and that is down from about 2,000 alerts that we had created. And what you can see on the right-hand side here is all the metrics here you can see what the top alerts are. And this entire thing is being run by playbooks, right? So if you want to see, how do these metrics get calculated, we can actually, every time some analyst does something with the case management system, we can query our own case management system, and we can run all the analysis around it, produce all of those metrics, and then add those metrics to the dashboard here, right? And so you can schedule these playbooks. So think of these as analytical playbooks that are asking the case management system, okay, give me a list of all the cases. Tell me how much time it took from going from one stage to another stage. So you can look at the difference between when was the case created, when was the case closed, do the difference, and that's how you run a mean over group by days, and you can calculate what your MTTR on every single day is, or you can go back 30 days and you can calculate your MTTR that way. Now, let's look a quick look at the playbook. And one of the core pieces of it is obviously tracking, reporting, tracking, dashboarding, so that you have all the metrics at your fingertips. The other part of it is a very, very powerful case management system. So let me show you a little bit of the case management system, how that works. We do have a place to store all the alerts, right? But our philosophy always has been is analysts should never have to look at the alerts, because as you can see, there are 2,000 alerts and we have 3 security analysts, simply not enough time for them to go through every single alert. And quite honestly, most of that would be a waste of time. So we have playbooks that actually look at all of these alerts and create a list of cases. And even in this system, right, if you look at it, there is about 10,000 different alerts that we have pulled in. And this is connected to the SIM and pulling in all the alerts. But we have created about 84 cases. So that is 100 to 1 reduction in the number of cases that you create. And furthermore, the case that we end up creating, there is all the context already added here. And then it even explains, and this is MDR automation, because this comment is left by a playbook. And there is a score that gets calculated, which is 5. It's not a 9, it's not a 10. If it was a 9 or a 10, the priority on this case would be marked as critical, but because it's a 5, it's marked as a low. And even then, there are a bunch of these actions that you can come in and you can actually run. And these commands are also like mini playbooks that once you click the button, it will, for example, it can take an IP address, go to an external IP reputation source, virus total, whatnot, and get you that data back to you. Or you can query your EDR system. Whatever analysis that an analyst would do after the case is created, you can either automatically do it before the case is created and put all of that information in the case, or turn into these automated tasks or commands that analysts can simply run and on demand. And this is what we call one-click automation, is you trigger an automation after you have reviewed the case. And this is how a typical playbooks look like. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit, right? And it starts out by pulling alerts from last 30 days. We aggregate all the alerts, create unique features, look up a whitelist, and then we correlate different alerts into and aggregate them into a single case. We determine what the priority of the case is going to be. And then once we have all the information, we programmatically create a case. And that's how analyst gets something that looks like this. So 90%, and I would even go and say 95% of the work that the analyst would have to do is already being done by the automation them. So they have to do the last, but perhaps the most important 5% of the work. And that typically means you're utilizing very small team of security analysts to the fullest. And we have typically seen analysts are happier because they don't have to do the mundane work, and the MTTR, mean time to respond, we have seen it improve by as much as 10 to 20x in a matter of months, weeks and months. So with that, let me pause. This is available today. I would again emphasize that, and we would be very happy to talk to you if you think this can be applied, this sort of technology can be applied in your security operations to deliver those benefits that we talked about. Thank you very much.
Great job.
Okay. So that's it. I think we'll have to edit this a little bit, but I think it's a 25-minute full on, but with some editing, it will probably be more like a 20-minute end-to-end talk.
Yeah, I think it's perfect. We'll watch through it, and if there's anything that we feel like we could use another run through or something like that, I'll schedule some time with you, but I thought everything looked great, so I think we're probably good to go.
Cool, very cool. Thank you for all the help. And so in terms of next step, at some point, will I see a video of this that would be ready to, like a teaser video and a full-on video? Is that the next? I mean, there are a lot of next steps behind the scenes, but what's the next touch point to see what came out of this?
Yes, so we're going to have a video on the landing page on the website for the SOAR trial. So this is going to be on that. And then we're potentially going to cut some smaller clips for social media as well, especially when we want to help promote the longer webinar we're going to do in January. And we ended up scheduling that one for January 25th. Just this morning we scheduled that. So
Ali, the question I think more specifically is, when can I see a recording video of this internally? Like
probably in the next couple days.
Version.
Yeah, in the next couple days.
That's very cool. Very cool. Yeah, so let me know, and I'm more than happy. Like if something did not come across well, I won't hesitate to redo it, and just let me know, and I'll put the time in to re-record if needed.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Talk soon. Take care.
All right. Bye, Kumar.
Bye.